We're joined by Trevor Burmeister today. Trevor is a hitting coach in the Rockies organization. He's been around the state, a number of colleges, at travel ball, and all kinds of things around the game of baseball. So, Trevor, we're excited to have you. Thanks for joining us today.
No, it's great to be on the call with you guys, and especially anything related to the state of Wisconsin and baseball. I'm all fired up to be a part of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, obviously the Rockies organization, you were in low A last year, and then you said you're moving to high A. Which, first off, congrats on the promotion there. But that takes up maybe 6 or 7 months of the year plus a little bit of preparation. So in an off season like this, we're in mid-January, spring training, maybe about a month away. What exactly does life look like for Trevor Burmeister this time of year?
Yeah, it's a different lifestyle for sure. My home base is here in Wisconsin, but you're not at your home base for very much or very long throughout the year because, like you mentioned, 6, 7 months of the year you're gone, whether it's spring training, then to your affiliate. But right now, for me, it's kind of cool because we do get quite a bit of time to, venture into some other avenues. So like right now, I'm running a whole bunch of camps around the state of Wisconsin. It's called Dog Ball, DAWG ball camps. And here and there, we have Zoom calls and, with our hitting coordinators or hitting coaches all the way up to the big leagues. It's about bi-weekly. We have coaches calls specifically with the hitting coaches. But right now, I'm very invested within the state of Wisconsin and helping as many kids as we can and families. It's kind of cool. We travel to Eau Claire, Wausau, Rylander, Lake Mills, Middleton, Verona. I'm sure I'm forgetting someplace, but kind of traveling around the state and just trying to impact as many kids and families as we can within this camp setting that we have created. It's year 3 of doing it. And next year, we're actually going to be transitioning into something a little bit different with it, where we're actually going to be doing some online stuff with it too, to where we can branch out and be with kids longer than just a 2.5 hour camp, but maybe even a 3 month period. So we're really excited about what the future looks for that too. But as you can imagine, being my big boy job with the Rockies and all that entails, and then in the off season doing all these camps and stuff within the state of Wisconsin, my plate's pretty full, but I love it and I enjoy waking up every day. So I can't complain.
How many total camps are you running right now around the state?
From November to about February, so 3, 4, I would say it ends up being close to about 10.
Oh, wow.
Um,
And,
some of them are a little bit different though. Our camps are only limited to 12 kids, which I think is great.
oh,
It really allows me and my partner Nick Guile, who's actually a really good baseball player in the state of Wisconsin, was with the Rockies for a couple years. We do it together, but it really allows us to get one-on-one attention with the kids. Actually create a real relationship rather than 30 kids running around and you hardly get to talk to all of them. So we do that, but we also have a few others sprinkled in where it's just like 4 players from high school, and we're just spending a day with them. So those are a little bit, slower paced, easier to manage, but a lot of fun because you can really zone in on the kids individually, and we've started to sprinkle more of those in as well. So, but yeah, keeps you very busy.
I got to imagine that just adds to your abilities and kind of not your Rolodex, but just your ability to kind of maybe understand what each individual player and how they tick, and then you can know what to implement with a certain kid with maybe a certain swing flaw or something like that, or really how to touch a player that now you're running camps in the off season. You're basically coaching year round now. That's only got to help in what you're doing right now with the Rockies.
Yeah. I never want to turn this off my head.
Yeah.
And I'll say, like, when you're working even with a youth kid, like, you're having to dumbify it and simplify it the best way possible. And that directly does affect and impact my professional guys. When I can sometimes with them, within their lens and how they process information, some guys need it the most simple possible way, and I think through my experiences with working with these young kids, I've found, there's a cliche within coaching, you better have like 15 ways to say one thing. Like when you're working with youth kids, yeah, you find a whole bunch of crazy analogies that make sense to them. But yeah, the biggest thing is like I like to keep my brain working, and I like continuing to challenge my own ideas. I one of my greatest mentors in the game is Darren Everson, who got me into the Colorado Rockies, and he always challenged me to. It's not about proving your ideas right. It's can you prove your ideas wrong? And I think when you have also then this opportunity to work with all these different high school and youth kids, you can be a little bit creative with them because they're just a wide open canvas and they want to learn. And I've learned a whole bunch of things working with these kids that I know that I can take with me when I'm working one-on-one with a player with the Rockies. It's pretty powerful and pretty impactful.
That's awesome. I got one more before I let Andy and David jump in with a question. So maybe just go through just how you got to this position. Maybe just kind of talk about your not your resume, but just your background of I know you started your college ball at UW La Crosse. Just kind of go through that and where you are and how you got to the position you're in today.
I'll try to go the shortened version. I know previous podcasts, I usually talk way too long on this question.
Okay.
So, yeah, it started Verona, Wisconsin. That's where I went to high school. I was a football, baseball player. Loved football. Thought I was going to be a college football player. Only problem was I was 5'10" and I couldn't run like Russell Wilson. So, those opportunities didn't really present themselves, but we had a lot of success. So then I really started diving into baseball. But baseball was kind of the first love, especially within my family, generations back, baseball players. And really invested myself. My dad was my coach growing up. So being a coach's kid, being always involved in the game, very important. But then through high school, had some success. I actually didn't get Madison College was my first stop, and Coach Davenport actually recruited me my senior year of high school, believe it or not. Back then, players actually could get recruited at their senior year of high school. So things have changed a lot. But went to Madison was the best decision I could have made. A lot of really good players around me. It really challenged me. As you guys know, when you're the high school player and one of the better players on your team, and then you're going to college, now you're looking around and you're like, man, everybody's pretty damn good here. So, but learned a lot there. It really ignited my love for the game, being with Coach Davenport. The details, the curiosity, just the attention to detail, second to none. I mean, with how he runs his program there. And I think it really started to make me see things from that coaching lens, even though I was still playing, of like how important the details are. Had aspirations there of potentially getting a Division I offer. A lot of kids go there to try to open up those type of opportunities. Didn't work out. Potentially some as like a preferred walk-on, but nothing serious. Definitely some offers in Division II and then Division III. And my brother actually was going to school at UW La Crosse, and I loved the city. I loved the school whenever we'd go and visit him. So I actually made the decision to go to a D3 school instead of a D2 school because the situation was just so much better for me. The quality of life, the education, and it was a baseball program that was about to take off. We were talking before we went live here about Coach Gillitzer and Coach Schwartz there. Right away I clicked with them, and I knew I would enjoy being a player for them. So went to their program. We had a lot of success there too. And long story short, when my career was done, opening on their staff presented itself. And Schwartz was nice enough to let me just join right away. And I jumped in. I started as like mostly in charge of the outfielders, would help Gillitzer with the hitters. Was there for 2 or 3 years. And then an opening at Minnesota Duluth, graduate assistant job opened up at Minnesota Duluth. Went there where I was my first time being a full-time hitting coach, where I was in charge. We had an unbelievably gifted, talented team that year, loaded with seniors and talent. Jimmy Heck, Wojciechowski, Kyle Comer, we were loaded. I knew what I was walking into, and I knew it'd be a really good situation for a first-time hitting coach. Went to a regional, had a lot of success there. I was there for only 1 year, and then Coach Davenport called me and asked me if I'd want to come back to Madison College. Always in the back of my mind, I was waiting for that phone call. Wanted to go back and learn from him again. Was there for about 3 years, and then Darren Everson called and asked if I wanted to pursue being a hitting coach in the Rockies organization. Went through a pretty long interview process with that, and was offered the job, and 5 years later, here I am. So started in rookie ball, was there for it's always hard to remember with COVID, but 2 years, I believe, or 2 seasons in low A Fresno, and will be in my first year at high Spokane this coming season.
That's a great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's a great story.
What, Trevor, what stuck out to me there, well, just because we've been talking about this all off season with so many of the like recruiting changes going on, and like I think there are some things that you need to focus on as a player, like currently in high school, where it's like, all right, how much, like, how close to the ground do I have to be paying attention to all these changes happening, versus like, control what you can control, find the best fit possible. I think like what you had said about like lacrosse, like maybe you had some other offers out there, like I don't know, like you weren't like quite as connected to those, or they just didn't fit or feel right. But then like it seems like it was like this instantaneous fit for you at lacrosse, like not just the school or the baseball program itself, but like the city even, like, so there were just a ton of factors there. But do you want to just like elaborate on that a little bit? Because I think while all this stuff is going on in the recruiting landscape, like this still like rings true, and it feels like it'll ring true forever, is just like finding this right fit.
I'm really happy you asked that question, because like when I was at Madison College, I was actually the recruiting coordinator too, and I would talk to kids about this all the time. Where for me, and what I learned, and it helped that I was raised by, especially my mother was very focused on chase your heart, chase your passions, like chase what feels right, and would constantly reinforce that message for me, to where it wasn't, chase what is going to look like the best offer on Twitter, so that everybody can, be happy for you and clap. It's like, no, you got to do what you feel like is right inside your heart. And when I was a recruiting coordinator, there were those three factors that I would really talk to the kids about, where it's like, education, like, does lacrosse had the education I wanted, had the programs that I wanted? I mean, that's first and foremost. Like, I need to find, if I'm going to make school enjoyable, because of course I want to play baseball, but if I'm going to make it enjoyable, I got to find a degree that makes my tail wag, that makes me excited. They had that. The quality of life, it's a beautiful city, great college town, just gorgeous, and a really enjoyable place to be around or be in. And then the third one was baseball tradition, and I knew I was walking into a program that was on the up and up and was about to really take off. And my first year there was 2012, and that's when they, at the time, broke a school record in wins, went to a regional, and it was just really fun to be a part of. So it was always the three criteria. It was education, quality of life, and baseball tradition. And another part of it too, like going from, like I said, you go to Madison College because you are trying to prep yourself and improve yourself for more opportunities that weren't available for you out of high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those type of opportunities that I was envisioning and dreaming didn't show up for me, right? So it really just then came down to what is the best fit and what is going to make me the most happy. And lacrosse checked all the boxes, and I'm just really, really glad that I made that choice, because it definitely was the right place for me.
Yeah, we talk all the time to kids about finding that right fit. Really good question, Andy, and even better answer, Trevor. I mean, it really rings true. It obviously couldn't have rung more true in your story and in mine as well. I'm very convinced I would have sniffed a day of professional baseball if I hadn't gone to UWL. And then also the people that I encountered in college that believed in me, right? And it just really was able to develop once I was there. And it sounds like that's the same story as far in terms of people who have believed in you, because you said something about Scott Gillitzer that he said, so you obviously he impacted your career and in a big way, but then he also gave you a big piece of advice you were telling us before we went on air. What was that?
Yeah, Gilly continues to impact me. I mean, I just love being around Scott Gillitzer and Chris Shores. It's so cool. Before I get into that piece of advice, it's so cool, like, when you're a player, for people, like, I've been a player for Gillitzer and Shores. I was a player for Coach Davenport, but then you jump into the other side of it and you see like these different sides of them. It's really kind of cool to see, and just great, great human beings. And I think I've always been very calculated intentionally of the people I want to surround myself with and the programs and the truth that comes out of their mouth. And I'm pretty good at reading people. And I think even back then I was pretty good at reading people because I just found myself in some really powerful and impactful environments. And it all starts with the people at the top. But when the opportunity came for the Rockies, Gilly talked to me and he said, "Hey, Berm, you got to do me a favor. No matter what round they were drafted, no matter where they are on the totem pole, do me a favor and treat everybody the exact same." That was the advice that he gave me. And I looked at Gilly and I'm like, "Gilly, I'm an underdog. I don't think you got to worry about that." So I'm lucky to be in an organization too where we have the opportunity to treat everybody on an equal playing field in terms of the amount of attention and time we give them. And it's no different than when I was at Madison College or UW La Crosse or Duluth. The common words that come out of my mouth are, "You'll get out of this what you want. If you want to come to the cage, I'll be there. Let's get to work." And it's funny how the underdog guys, kind of like a Scott Gillitzer when he was in pro ball, are always at the cage, always looking for that 1% better. Those are the guys you like to be around. Those are the guys that spark your own curiosity. But it was a great piece of advice because at that point I didn't know what the environments could be like in pro ball. And Gilly just wanted me to make sure, because he's been in those shoes before, that those guys feel intention from you, that you're there to also make them better. And I've really held on to that, and it's been something that's been super important to me.
Yeah. So, Trevor, I grew up in like the Chicago area. I grew up in Illinois, and it was around the time. It was about like 6-7 years ago. I think going on year 7 now with prep baseball. I just didn't know anything about baseball in Wisconsin prior to coming up here, and I think that was what was the most eye-opening thing to me. And I'm just curious, like what you think is sort of like the secret ingredient here, because there are like a ton of really, really good baseball people in Wisconsin, and maybe it's like because it's such a, I don't know, like small, like is the wrong word, but it's almost like it feels very like communal, the baseball scene in Wisconsin, like those coaches, Schwartz, Giltzer, those are great dudes. I love talking to them at the Rock or a tournament or something like that. And like Davenport is like this, mastermind in Madison. He's got this like powerhouse junior college program that's just good no matter what. Like, but it's not just them; it's all over the place. But like, I don't know. What's your take on that? Just having been around so many of these dudes that really get the most out of their rosters and like also seem like great people just to be around and so on.
I think, at least from the environments I've been in, it's all been, one of the things that Coach Davenport talks about the most is accountability. And these environments, it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to, like, every single day you're holding people to that standard, and Coach Davenport's a mastermind at that. I mean, he's so good. We always joke with him, like, there's a method to your madness. We just can't figure it out what it is, but for him, he's so good at, it could be the littlest thing. He's going to hold you accountable. He's going to hold you to that standard, even to the point where, when I was a player and you're kind of looking at him like, get off my back, man. Holy cow. But then when you walk away from the program, you realize how impactful and how important that all was, how much of a place it came from, where he loves you and he cares about you and he's trying to get the best out of you. And I think no matter what, those type of environments, and I would also say this, like both places I went to, they tell the truth. Like what comes out of their mouth is the truth. And that it's sincere. There's never like one thing said and then something else happens, and I think that's really important. I've heard some horror stories out there in terms of, some programs saying one thing and then the opposite happens, especially within the recruiting trails and that type of stuff. And, I think, just the overall environment in college baseball has changed so much, and it's become very difficult for coaches too. And but I've been very, very fortunate, very lucky that I've just been around people that their values dictate, that they're going to hold you accountable, but no matter what they say, they're going to tell you the truth. So you always know where you stand and where you need to go, and I think that's really, really important when it comes to the places that are having a lot of success year in and year out.
Well, clearly those guys have rubbed off on you. I can tell. So one of the things that I kind of had a superpower, I felt like, but I feel like every player does, in terms of you can meet a coach in pro ball, anywhere, right? High school, any level. Within 5 seconds, I would say, of interacting with that coach, you can tell whether or not that coach has your best interest in mind or if they're trying to advance their career. I can tell within 5 seconds of talking to you, Trevor, that you care about players more than you care about your own personal accolades as a hitting coach, which can be a thankless job at times. But so that sticks out like a sore thumb. It really does. And so I can sense that in talking to you. Is that something that you try to kind of embody or that, I mean, clearly it's a natural attribute of yours. I can tell how passionate you are about the game, which is so cool. And then also your background and your story of getting to where you are. Where does that come from? And is that something you try to cultivate? And again, I'm sure that the players are very thankful that you work with because of that.
Again, I'm probably just gonna have to give credit like how I was raised because like I don't know where it comes from, but that's what I pride myself on. And it's not about like toot my horn. I know that's what my core values are. My core values lie in the player and the relationship with the player to a fault, to the point where like, pro ball's a messy business, and sometimes guys get released, that, and it hurts. Like it sucks, especially when you build those bonds with those guys and you're just trying to find any possible way, for them to catch lightning in the bottle. So it's always been a part of who I am. I even remember back when I was at Madison College, we only had those guys for 2 years and, we got a lot done with them in 2 years, but such a powerful environment and community that was created within the Madison College doors that when those guys would move on, man, it just sucked. It's like, man, I wish I had 2 more years with these guys. I only had 2 years with them. So it's always been kind of a part of who I am. And, I always want to keep it about the relationship. I want to keep it about the player. It's funny, Vinny, because like a lot of people ask me, like, what's your 5-year plan? And I am so bad at answering that question.
Yeah, me too.
Like,
Yeah.
I tell them straight up, like, my path, and this is how it's worked for me. Like, when I was at UW La Crosse, that felt the same to me as me now being with the Colorado Rockies. When I was at Duluth, it felt the same for me as when I was with the Colorado Rockies. Same thing with Madison College. I felt that level of importance at all the stops because these players that are looking at me are relying on me to help them perform and be better people and players on the field. I always had that sense. So it's like the whole idea of trying, it's hard to do, but being where your feet are, I just am holding out hope that, if I just continue to stay where I'm at and do the best job where I am at, that will lead me wherever I'm supposed to go, and so yeah, people always kind of roll their eyes when they ask me about the 5-year plan, and I can't give the answer because it's just literally how I've worked, and I don't think about that in terms of me. I know that some of the players I'm going to have this year, and I'm doing work right now trying to figure out how are we going to make them even better than they were last year with the Rockies, and I'm excited about that process. So it's just kind of how I tick and how I operate.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's an awesome answer. I like identify that with that too. Like there's just that level of fulfillment that it's like I don't know, I feel good right now. Like so I'm happy. Like this is working for me. I had a question here too about just your so you were obviously very like ingrained with the Wisconsin like baseball scene, or like even at that point in time, like whatever it was 5 years ago, like coaching a travel ball. So you're just super tied into like what it looked like, the caliber of player in the state. But curious now, like maybe some of the biggest lessons you learned in pro ball that you would apply to that same coach 5 years ago that you were. Just some of those biggest like takeaways, whether it's like from an actual like mechanical like whatever analytical standpoint or just advice, I guess.
Great question. It's funny because like this is my first podcast since 2020, I believe, like the COVID time. And I was thinking back to like some of the things I was talking about back then, and it's just like, man, like so much has changed in 4 years' time in terms of how I see things and my philosophy. But I really do feel like if we're not operating that way, then we're not growing and we're not learning. Every 4 years, we should have new tools in our toolbox that we know can help players be successful. But I felt like back then for me, I was always willing to work, and I wanted to work, and I think there is some truth to like the cliche. It's not about like what it's how much you're willing to find the answer, and that's always been something inside of me. And I had those people around me, like we talked about, that were like-minded to where it became pretty powerful with us together. But, I think back then, the most, I would say that the lens has changed a little bit in terms of like how I evaluate a hitter, like what I'm looking at. But I definitely think in general, and I'm not sure what it's like. I haven't been on the recruiting trail in over 4 or 5 years now, but
Mhm.
the overall level of baseball IQ, I think, is super, super important. And I don't think it's being coached enough. And we're even seeing it in pro ball where, believe it or not, like some guys that should have some experience are getting there and they're not really knowing how to line up a double cut. They're not really knowing how to do like this simple, what should be simple parts of the game. That's a lesson learned that no matter, I guess, to take this all full circle, the lesson learned is like the things that we're still teaching in pro ball are not that far off to what I was teaching at
Yeah.
Madison College, especially for our younger players. So it's like we all have an obligation and we all have a duty to still keep it about the details, to keep it about what makes this game so pure and played so well. Um, that was like a very eye-opening experience where it's just like, man, granted, I started in rookie ball and a lot. Our average age on the rookie ball team my first year might have been younger than our Madison College team
Yeah,
that I
it
was with the year
probably was.
before.
Yeah, yeah, it
But
probably was.
you would expect that they'd be further along from, like an organizational standpoint on the field of where they should go, all this type of stuff. Total opposite. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, I think we run a better double cut at Madison College. Like crazy. So that's like probably the biggest thing. And then, like I said, overall, just like kind of evaluating the swing and understanding what's truly important within the swing and not chasing just bat speed, not chasing home runs, but like what actually gets you there. You
Mhm.
can see it right away with kids, young hitters, where they're the cage monster, but then as soon as the game starts, they're not going to have a lot of success. But there's a lot of unfortunate and tough information out there that is free and accessible, and kids and families just have to be really careful with what they're investing their attention into, because there's a lot of stuff out there that quite frankly isn't good. There's a lot of stuff out there that's really good, and I'll just say this with that: I don't have original ideas, right? So like I'm really good at stealing really good ideas. You just have to know how to find them, right? And what makes sense, what doesn't, and throw away the other stuff. It's tougher than ever in today's day and age just because there's so much readily available information and so many quote unquote experts out there, that it's just really changed the purity of the game. And I think, again, we all have an obligation to navigate that the best we can to guide these kids the best way possible. That was a very like crazy answer I just gave you,
No, that
but
was great.
That was
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
that was great. Yeah, not reinventing the wheel. I think it's as simple as that, basically.
Yeah.
I'm curious because you obviously we've covered the different stops you've made, but I mean you coached D3 and then to D2 to one of the top JUCOs, coaching some travel ball guys who I think are playing professionally now, and then to the Rockies organization. Was that jump like to pro ball? Was that the biggest jump you've made, or do you feel like maybe one of the other jumps along the way? What were some of the differences in coaching at each of the levels?
um Yeah, probably like on paper the biggest jump for sure. Like the college route was very unique because, like I said, I totally felt lacrosse, Duluth, Madison College, like it felt like my Rockies. It felt super important, like which I love that. I love that feeling because it's like you have an obligation to where these guys are trusting you and they're relying on you to help them. But then going from you know. Lacrosse to Duluth, that's like D3 to D2. It didn't feel like a crazy jump because I knew how good the WIAC conference was. I knew how good the baseball was in the WIAC conference. And quite honestly, I think you plug in lacrosse and schools like Whitewater into the NSIC, I think they're going to compete just fine.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
but then I would say the jump, and then going to Madison College, I was familiar with the program. I knew what it was all about, so there was a comfort with that. I knew with Coach Davenport is really unique because, being totally in charge of the hitters at Duluth and then going to Madison, Coach D knew me as a player, but I was now in with the coach's hat on, the coach's lens on. I had to kind of earn that trust again with him to be completely in charge of the hitters. He's very particular of how he wants his program run, and he should be, because look how successful they are. But it didn't take long for him to realize that we were very much on the same page, and a lot of the stuff that I'd learned from him was still being communicated or spewed out of my mouth. So then from him, the jump to pro ball, I would say this, David, like the biggest jump for me was more mentally. It's more of like a challenge for me personally, mentally, of like not making it bigger than it actually is. In terms of like, I'm around professional baseball players now. I'm around guys that have multi-million-dollar signing bonuses. Like, oh my God, there's Charlie Blackmon. Like the best story I can tell is when I first got hired, I showed up, got my locker assignment, or they showed me where my locker was. They gave me all my gear and all my stuff. And at that point, there was nothing more to do. So our big league team was actually playing outside, and it was still early enough to where it was about the fifth inning, and the main starters get to go home, right? So you see them walking down the line into the facility, and one of them was Nolan Arenado. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to the hotel, get checked in, get settled in. I go grab my stuff, and I'm walking down the hallway, and then who comes like and meets me right at the door is Nolan Arenado. And you talk about like, okay, I'm now an employee for the Colorado Rockies. I had the biggest fangirl moment. Like, super excited to see Nolan Arenado, but I held it in. I kept it cool, but that was like the biggest transition of like, holy cow, like there's a responsibility here, but as time goes on, you also realize that you have to earn the trust for sure at that level, at any level, but you really have to earn the trust. I feel like that's one of my superpowers. It takes time. I don't just jump in right away trying to act like I'm the smart guy. I really want them to feel like, hey, we're going to do this together. That works for whether it's the free agent sign or the guy in the first round that has $1 million in his bank account. So you prove to them that you have value that can help them perform. You just have to be willing to take your time to prove that. And that was the biggest transition for sure for me, was learning how to operate that. Because like when you're in college ball, I recruited those boys. Like, they're mine. they're ours.
Yeah.
This is a little bit different where now you're approaching a different personality and a different mindset when it comes to this is their job now. So good question though.
Yeah, and you're threading a needle here too with being a hitting coach. I think it's the hardest job in all of sports in terms of coaching. I really do. Just you don't know what kind of impact you really are having with the results. You try and focus on the process of what you're trying to teach these kids, I'm sure, and how you're trying to impact them. It's a thankless job, right? So if a guy that you've been working with all of a sudden starts going off, I mean, you don't really take the credit, but guys get fired left and right, especially in the big leagues, right? You kind of get hired to get fired. That's kind of the cliche as far as hitting coaches are concerned. And those guys have a very short lifespan as big league hitting coaches. It's kind of thankless. How do you deal with the mental rigors of that, I guess? And just, I mean, you have 13 or more guys, right? Guys are coming on and off the disabled or the IL all year long. You get guys promoted and demoted. So you're working with at least 20 or more players every single year. How do you deal with the mental rigors of the whole season of being a hitting coach?
I love it.
Yeah.
Every part of it. And, I'll be honest with you, last season was probably the most challenging season I've ever had in my coaching career. And it was just, it's one of those things like right when you feel like you really got this thing figured out, the game goes, nah, no, you don't. Yeah. No, you don't. And it had more to do with just dealing with personalities. I learned a lot from it. And I even told the group at the end that, I think they knew that there was a lot of challenges that we went through together. And I was like, I'll look back 5-10 years from now and be super grateful for this season, even though it was very frustrating at times, just because of, how much it challenged me and how much I had to pivot, and kind of figure out some new ways to approach it with this group or this individual. Definitely going to be impactful going forward. But I love problem solving. I always give the analogy to the players, like when they come to the cage for me with like the first time, it's like a messy puzzle, whether you're a first round pick or a free agent sign, like everybody has a puzzle that needs to be put together somehow for something. And from the offensive side, it's your job to sit down on this floor with me and put this puzzle together. And I just love doing that. And we have a pretty good process within the Rockies of, you know, evaluating the objective in-game data. Um, the stuff that really matters, like swing decisions, in zone contact rate, you know, things that directly affect the success you're going to have on the field, of evaluating that almost like on a bi-weekly process where we can kind of stay on top of like, hey, your swing decisions have taken a little bit of a dip here. Maybe we should add this into your routine. So it kind of helps this type of player and how they process information, of keeping them on the same page with you also. But um, we have we have a lot of resources available to us to help us, make the process digestible. I like to say it that way. A lot of people would think it's the opposite, but you just have to figure out how to do it within your confines of what you have available to you. And then you have to get on the same page with the players. I just love that daily process, day in and day out, of creating that trust, putting the work in. And, they get to the big leagues. And if I don't get a shout out, I'm cool with it, because I'm still watching a kid that I coached that I remember in the cage what we worked on. And I'm watching him have success in Coors Field. Like, it's starting to happen for me. Guys like Jordan Beck and Hunter Goodman, guys that I actually had in my dugout at one point, they're starting to get to the big leagues. It's a pretty good feeling. That's the only feeling I need. I don't need them to stand on a podium and say, "Hey, Berm coached me once." No, it's just all of our jobs to figure out where are they at right now, and what do we got to work on? What is the game communicating to them that they need to work on? And let me be a part of that process with you. That's how I approach it.
Yeah, that's so cool. And Berm, I can tell, and I know it's not in your 5-year plan because you don't have one, but I can just tell, and I'm excited, and I can't wait to continue to follow your career. But you're gonna coach in the big league someday, man. It's you can just feel it. So, we could talk all day long with you. I mean, this is just so enlightening and so awesome to kind of talk with you. Maybe we'll just ask you maybe one more question if you have some time. I guess maybe just the biggest thing, maybe considering that this is Prep Baseball Wisconsin's podcast, if you could give any advice to any of maybe it's all players, including pitchers, but any advice to players that are trying to grind their way and make a good, sound decision to go to the next level, play in college, or maybe some of these kids, and they will play in pro ball. But any advice just generally that you could give the players here in the state?
It's a great question. And you guys do such a good job. I mean, even back when I was in the Wisconsin college landscape, how much easier you made my job of being able to, go around and see players, and giving players that opportunity is just so huge, to, be in one place where there's a whole bunch of eyes that can watch them perform. So kudos to you guys. Keep up the good work. I guess the advice for me would be, like, there's such an importance of not trying to look too far ahead. Like, kind of like what we talked about. It's the only way that I know, is just being so engulfed in what I am doing right here, right now. So hard for players to do these days. Because they're looking, there's a couple kids that I have worked with that were in high school, like young high school, freshman, sophomore, and they're already like talking to me about, like, how should I reach out to colleges? How should I do this? And I'm like, bro, you haven't even performed on the varsity field yet. Like, what are we talking about? And it's not all the kids' fault that they're kind of programmed to think that way, but there's some truth, a lot of truth, that you gotta be a good high school baseball player first, right? To get those opportunities. And when you are a good high school baseball player, and then you guys provide the opportunities that you do, now we're talking, right? But I just feel like kids try to, get way too far ahead in the process of where they're actually at right now. And the other piece of advice I would give is, we are really good at, like, training the physical parts of this game, and not nearly enough tensions being put onto, like, the mental side of it. And that's one thing, especially within these camps that we're running, dog ball camps, and what we're hoping it transitions to. with the online format and maybe the 3 to 4 month program where these kids are with us. My brother's actually going to be a part of it, and he's at the University of North Dakota. He's assistant athletic director, student athlete development. So he's going to join into this program. He's just going to help these kids develop mindset, like how to time manage, how to deal with adversity, how to deal with success, how to, things that we typically don't talk enough about. But the muscle itself is, or I'm sorry, the brain itself is a muscle that we don't spend enough time working on. So, like a lot of these kids, like the overall pressures of performing, you know, getting colleges to want you, even going to like a PBR event, that's intimidating for a kid with all those coaches there. It's like, if you invest a little bit more time into also the mental part of it and learning strategies and skills and tools in your toolbox to handle this, I know for a fact, especially what I've experienced in pro ball, that this is a part of it, and this is something that needs to be evaluated that directly correlates to success. And it's not just at pro ball, it's all the way down. But if you start building those habits really well, let's say in middle school, and then it just continues to grow and carries with you through high school, man, that's a kid that I want in my dugout that I can rely on when we really need something to get done. So that's just two pieces of advice that I just see a lot of, and hopefully somebody will grab onto it.
Yeah, awesome. Because Berm, I was going to ask you kind of a lighthearted thing, I guess, but I think it was my first Badger State tournament, or at Mauston. You know what I'm talking about, the Woodside a summer tournament that we hosted. And I'll never forget it because it was like my favorite. I think it's the perfect way to describe like how intense Wisconsin baseball can be at times. Just if you have any like favorite memories kind of like this, or even maybe this one, but it was like Jack Washburn versus Connor Prelip. They were our top 2 ranked players in the state. It was getting heated. It was hitters versus GRB, but this was like kind of back in the day when this, like, I don't know, I maybe you haven't been around it like quite as much or something. Like it has like changed a little bit. But this was at a time it was contentious, but it was extremely fun to watch. Like it was something you got really excited for if that matchup was going to happen. But it was just like a really good game, and like Connor Prelip was like unbelievable.
He struck us out. He struck us out like 18 times.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. And RJ, like it was a classic RJ, and made us laugh, but he was kind of like teasing us about how Connor Prelip at the time was like ranked too low or something. But it was perfect. Like it was just like this great moment. And these are all like more great baseball people in the state. But just wondering if you have any like fond memories from like that time, because that was my introduction to it, and I think about it all the time still, to be honest. So.
Yeah, I don't know if I call that a fond memory for me because, Prelip diced. And that lineup I had, unfortunately, had a whole bunch of left-handed hitters. So when you're having to go against Prelip, and man, he just dominated us. But no, going back to the travel ball scene, I was working for GRB and Greg, but I had a really good relationship with RJ and hitters because Coach Davenport and RJ are really, really good friends. So see him a lot. But it's actually kind of funny because I was just at Jake Snyder's wedding, who was a Colorado Rocky, just got Rule 5 with the Padres. Super happy for him. And RJ was there, so didn't know a lot of people. He didn't know a lot of people, so we sat and we talked a lot of baseball. It was fun for me, getting to be able to catch up with him, and we talked about that game.
Really?
And, yeah, we talked about that game. And then the following year, we played them again, and I just said to a couple of people that didn't really know the background of the travel scene and like hitters and GRB, and I just explained to them, I'm like, I have so much respect for this guy, but when I was on the field with him, I wanted to kick his ass. And
awesome.
he said, that's the only way. That's the only way.
I think that following year you're referring to, I'm pretty sure everybody got kicked out in the first 2 innings or something like that.
Oh man, not a proud moment. I look back at that though too, and it was strictly to protect our players because we were very low on pitching, and the strike zone was not allowing us to get through that game.
Yeah, I do. That does ring a bell. And honestly, but it always came from a place where it was more of like, I don't know, brothers like fighting versus, like actual like hatred there. Like I didn't really get that sense either. Like it felt like it was like this is Wisconsin baseball, like that's what's on the line. Like we're both like vying for like who's the best. Like that's like
Yeah.
what's at stake here. So that's what made it so entertaining, I guess. And then RJ screaming at Steve Nielsen, that which he was. Connor Prelude was ranked too low. It was very obvious after that. But RJ letting Steve Nielsen know, and Steve just laughing, putting his hands in his face and laughing.
Yeah, and I'll just say I was like always kind of caught in the middle because obviously you got GRB, you got hitters, like they're competing because they want to be the best in the state. They want to,
Mhm.
and that's just a little way in a 7 inning game to prove that like that one day that we're better. But for me, like being kind of in the middle of it, being at Madison College and recruiting a lot of hitters guys, recruiting GRB guys, like kind of seeing it full circle. For me, all it was is I just wanted to beat RJ because I just
Yeah.
like to compete, and RJ likes to compete, and I don't even know if I ever beat him. I don't think I did. So like, I think he brought that up too at the wedding. Is like, yeah, you didn't get me very much, and I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
it is what it is.
Sounds like it. Yeah, yeah. No, that's awesome. I know.
Great memories though.
Yeah, it's that really like underscores, I think, what's going on here in the States. So I appreciate you bringing that up too.
Good players everywhere, man, and we have a lot to be proud of. With Wisconsin players and them continuing to have success at really high levels, and there's just more coming. So proud to be in the state, and like bragging it up with how good how good baseball is all the way from high school all the way on up. So it's
Yep.
worth being excited for. I will just say this too. One thing that is really important to me is just surround yourself with really good people. We kind of alluded to it earlier. I was very, very calculated with the people I wanted to be around, and I know because I was calculated with those environments, it's helped me get to where I am today. And like you said, I might be in the big leagues someday. I guarantee you, it's not on the 5-year plan. But if I'm there, I'm all in. Like I'll enjoy the heck out of that experience. But I would just tell the kids that there is some importance to, we have 2 ears and one mouth and using these 2 ears. But especially if you surround yourself with like really good minded baseball people and people with a lot of wisdom, then it becomes even more powerful. And I've just been lucky enough to do that for every year in my journey along the way. But I really appreciate it, guys. This was great. Really good
Yeah, no,
questions. And
appreciate it.
it was nice to be a part of.
Yeah, thanks for your time, Trevor. Yeah, lots of good stuff to take away from this. So thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. Well, before we go, we've got our usual Rotino report, and I got a little sneak preview at this one. I'm excited for it. It's a fellow left-handed pitcher. So, Vinny, could you tell us who today's player is that you're featuring on the Rotino report?
Yeah, today we're taking a look at an exciting left-handed arm in Gage Honeyegger, Wisconsin Rapids, Lincoln High School. Really impressive look from this kid at the Eastern Wisconsin Open in Sheboygan. This is exactly why you show up at an event, something pops in your profile, as it did in the spring. This kid put up monster numbers in the spring. He came to the Eastern Wisconsin Open in Sheboygan, and then we saw it on display. Very quick arm, short arm stroke, up to 2,800, almost 2,800 RPMs on the spin rate of the fastball, and then almost 20 inches of IVB. So a ton of carry through the zone, was able to pound the zone at this event with the fastball, just pounding through the glove and through the strike zone. Also has a slider and a changeup to go with it. But Gage Honeyegger, only 5'8", but it is athletic as can be. Stature does not matter when you have this kind of profile to your fastball and then pairs it well with his secondary offering. So really exciting look from Gage, and we're excited to see what he can do in the spring.
Yeah, if you watch his showcase video, there's one even that's a fastball just through the zone, and the carry on it, I think it hits off the top of the catcher's mitt because the catcher wasn't expecting it to carry that much. So the whole thing, I mean, the stuff looks great, the delivery, effortless. He's someone that I have not seen in person, but I'm excited to. I hope to, because yeah, he's seems like a great arm. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Badger State Ball. Thanks again for tuning in, and follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple, wherever you find our podcast. Give us feedback, comments. Thanks for those who have commented suggestions or feedback so far. We really appreciate that. And find us at prepbaseballreport.com/Wisconsin. And until next time, let's bring back Badger baseball.